Thank you for joining us today for this football agility presentation. Let's get started.
Agility is the use of perceptual cognitive abilities in combination with change of direction to train the athlete to use body positions efficiently. Athletes do this with combinations of balance, coordination, speed, and reflex training. Many commonly used agility drills leave out an important cognitive component, which is where athletes get to use their reflexes. Agility does need to be sport specific to the context and the athlete.
Perceptual cognitive ability. One of our core principles in the latter half of our programming revolves around the development of this ability. Implementing this in our programming will help bridge the gap from our foundational agility training and our preseason individual drill work. Perceptual cognitive ability can be better defined as a combination of perception and action within agility training. It has been found that this combination not only becomes more sport specific, but elite athletes have the ability to produce a faster performance. The athlete's ability to identify task-relevant cues to produce accurate and rapid motor responses is a prerequisite for faster agility performance. With that being said, increasing the amount of effective perception action drills will likely increase decision-making and agility performance on the field. So for example here, we have a defensive back. He's effectively pattern matching the receiver. Then he's reacting to his break, which is part of that visual cue, transitioning his eyes to the quarterback, and then intercepting a ball. And that's really some of the carryover for this ability.
Philosophy of agility. Cognitive agility training reflects the ability of an athlete to make quick decisions in a dynamic context. We as coaches want to look at the demands of the athlete's sport in order to train for proper positioning and mechanics. We build motor patterns by adjusting space and distance through progressions.
Needs analysis. The sport we're working with is football. The time frame for this program stems over an 8-week period leading up to preseason. The sport-specific agility needs for football can be broken down into 3 different categories. Change of direction, which is best seen in wide receivers route running, ball carriers jump cuts or leverage cuts. The next would be maneuverability, which is found in defensive shuffling, backpedaling, and also collision avoidance. So whether it be a running back getting skinny through a hole, or linebackers that are focused on their keys and scraping laterally. The last category is that perceptual cognitive ability, which is being able to react to your opponents, and also formation recognition.
While we do place a high degree of emphasis on progressing the perceptual and cognitive demands of our agility drills, we still implement closed change direction work as a part of our warm-up. This controlled environment, along with our standard DWMA assessment and short bouts of linear acceleration within our warm-up, not only allows us to screen our athletes' movement, but also gradually exposes them to higher intensities as the warm-up progresses. So if you take a look at our example agility warm-up here, you can see that we'll start with about 20 yards of a dynamic warm-up movement assessment movement. And then right after that 20 yards, the athlete will go straight into a 10-yard burst of acceleration, from which they will get to a cone and then go into a one-step cut. Now, the one-step cut will progress from exercise to exercise from a 45-degree cut to then 90 degrees, then 135 degrees, and finally 180 degrees. Another thing you'll notice is that the DWMA movements that we chose typically expose the athlete to a lower center of mass, or otherwise it cues the athlete to somewhat stay low, which is a similar position that they'll be exposed to in any sort of deceleration or change of direction movement. After this warm-up, we can then get started with whatever agility work we have programmed for that day.
We're going to set up our program in 2 blocks, and with our first block being a 4-week block. So in weeks 1 to 4, our 3 goals are going to be general preparation, getting the athlete ready and prepared so that when we hit that weeks 5 through 8, they're ready to get into some sport-specific movements. And what that might look like is, developing good motor patterns, developing a good neuromuscular connection, and introducing small doses of venom into the body of agility drills so that when the athlete comes to competition where it really matters and they get into that fatigue state where injury is most likely to occur because their body is in poor positioning, the athlete, because we introduce those small doses of venom in training, the athlete's body just naturally puts them into a positive position to help minimize risk of injury. And then finally, our last goal is to be movement focused. And so what we want to do is we want to focus on developing a good shin angle, 45-degree shin angle, change of direction, deceleration, and controlling our center of mass. And so in this first drill, just a lateral jump and stick, we're focusing on creating force in a lateral direction and absorbing force in a lateral direction. So when an athlete like a wide receiver or a running back or a cornerback goes up for an interception or a catch and they come down, the athlete should come down and absorb that force in a positive manner so that they don't, get their foot caught in the ground and, roll their ankle, maybe even tear their ACL, MCL, do some negative ligament damage to their body, which can prevent them from playing. In the second drill, it's just a zigzag drill. We're focusing on deceleration into the cone, positive shin angle, 45-degree shin angle, controlling that center of mass when we're changing direction from right to left, and then finally accelerating through the cone. So here we're looking, does he anticipate the change of direction? Does he put his body and his shins in a good angle to propel him in a positive running direction? Is he controlling his center of mass? Is he getting low and being able to accelerate from cone to cone? Next, we have just a simple lateral drill here. Quick feet, and then accelerating through a cone. You can have a coach there saying a yellow, orange, just introducing that cognitive aspect to it. And here, again, building off of that, we add a deceleration component to it. Quick feet, sit, cognitive aspect, decelerate, accelerate to the cone, and then quickly decelerate and control their body. Next, this one is good for maybe a running back on a counter option or a stretch play, a wide receiver on a jet sweep, or even maybe a linebacker chasing down to make a tackle. So this is just some basic curvilinear running. Here we're focusing on positive shin angle, just developing speed, and making sure that we have that 45 degrees in the shins. And then finally, in this last drill, another zigzag drill, just basic change of direction. Is he sitting down? Is he controlling his body? Is he anticipating the change of direction? Where's his shin angle at? Is it propelling himself in a positive direction? Just those kind of things, and making sure that we're cueing the athlete correctly to understand the purpose of the drill.
As we stated in the previous slides, we are starting off the program by building the foundational movement patterns required of our athletes. For the first 2 weeks, we begin the session with some basic movements on the wall. These wall drills reinforce correct posture and creates the movement context that is essential for expression of agility. After the wall drills, we transition into training the fundamental movements, which are the crossover, back pedal, and the side shuffle in this case. Without competency in these areas, the athlete's ability to express force and create stability is compromised. To end these sessions, we seek to provide practical application of these movements with a couple of closed drills. In weeks 1 and 2, we use the 5-10-5 and the half circle run. After using these movements for 2 weeks, we progress by omitting the wall drills and begin the session with the fundamental movements, the crossover and stick, and the low shuffle push. Weeks 3 and 4 also have a large emphasis on developing our transitional and change of direction patterns. These 2 weeks involve 3 types of transitional movements. Number 1, transitioning a movement into a sprint, as seen in the crossover start and the back pedal drill. Number 2, changing the direction of a movement in the drills such as the 10-yard shuffle. And 3, drills that involve a combination of both movements, such as the chaotic serpentine used in this program. With the drill, you can place a greater emphasis on either type of transition, depending on the direction and distance between the 2 cones. Our athletes may be familiar with these movements already, but ensuring that fundamental techniques are sound is critical to their success in the following weeks.
Block number 2 will consist of weeks 4 through 8. Our goals for this block are to build upon the foundations that we established in block number 1 with shin angle, change of direction, and center of mass. Increase cognitive reaction embedded within the drill, change of direction, and eccentric loading and deceleration. Overall, there will be an increased intensity in these drills. Our goal is to ramp up that intensity for these last 4 weeks prior to handing the team back to the sport coaches. We will establish an SMT model that is cues for the athletes in regards to sound, movement, and touch. We will have open drills and 2-player games and competitions to mimic sports movements. Prior to this time, the athletes had been completing their agility drills by themselves in a predetermined cone drill reaction. By establishing another player within their agility drill, that allows the player to work off what they are seeing from that opposing player or to watch how they are moving and react to them, more closely mimicking that sport-specific drill. Examples of this could be a 2-person mirror drill where they face each other and one person is in charge of choosing if they are shuffling to the right, shuffling to the left, backpedaling, or sprinting, and the opposing player has to follow their lead. This could also be involved with a game of tag within a predetermined circle of cones, or a sprint to a tag game within a predetermined circle of cones. We will also implement catching of the football in drills for skill position players. For this first exercise, we're going to start with a speed skater jump to the right and to the left with an eccentric load and deceleration land at the orange cones, waiting for the cue from the coach to either sprint towards the blue or yellow cone. This cue will be a sound cue, so the coach will say blue or yellow after that athlete sticks their landing. The goal here for the speed skater jumps to start is to work on eccentric loading and deceleration, the cognitive aspect of hearing the color cone and seeing where that cone is for that sprint. We're also working on deceleration at that sprinting cone they are going towards. In this drill, the athlete will do a straight ahead sprint towards the orange cone, decelerate, and await the coaching cue on whether to sprint towards the blue or yellow cone. This can be done with sound by calling out the color of that cone, or it could be done with movement. The coach could point to the left or point to the right. The goal here is we want acceleration to deceleration, the cognitive aspect of the cone they are going to with either sound or movement, and then an acceleration and a deceleration. They will also stick at that cone. For this drill, the athlete will do a shorter straight ahead sprint, decelerate, and await the coaching cue on whether to sprint towards the blue or the yellow cone. However, on this instance, the athlete will not decelerate and stick at that cone, but instead decelerate, get around the cone as quick as possible, and accelerate through the finish line. The goal behind this is we want to decelerate at that cone, but get around it as quick as possible and re-accelerate as fast and explosive as possible. During this time, we could also implement the throwing of a football to a skill position player. As they turn around that cone and sprint out, the ball can be thrown. So now they are working with acceleration, but also another cognitive aspect of catching the football.
By week 5, the athletes are becoming proficient in their fundamental movements and in their transitions, so we can begin to shift our focus to developing the perceptual cognitive ability of the athlete. In these 4 weeks, we begin each session by continuing to reinforce the fundamental movement patterns, but performing them at a higher intensity in comparison to the previous weeks. This is mainly accomplished by performing a single movement in continuous succession, as seen in the lateral skip, crossover run, and short serpentine drills. Many of the drills will also involve the athlete reacting to a sound or the movement of another player. Using these open-style drills is imperative to improving decision-making ability and agility expression on the field. Another key principle of this final block is incorporating inherent competition in the drills. This ability to make decisions and react under the pressure of competition is extremely prevalent on the field, and if not trained, will limit the athlete's ability to succeed. A noteworthy drill combining these two principles is the jab step and defensive unders drill. The defensive athlete must react to the offensive athlete's movement and not allow them to outmaneuver and run past the athlete. This drill closely mimics the demands of a defensive back covering a wide receiver at the line of scrimmage. Other drills in this program that incorporate these two principles are the agility mirror and circle chase drill. A player reacting a half second faster on the field can be the difference between a win and a loss. Upon completion of this 8-week program, the athletes will be ready to express their physical and cognitive abilities in the upcoming season.
Here's a list of drills seen earlier in this presentation. We will provide a link so you can view these videos for yourself. And finally, these are our references. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it.